Greetings, friends. Welcome to the Grit and Equity Talks podcast with your host here, Dr. India White. I'm so thrilled to be here with you today. This is Pi Day. This is the best day of the year in the math world. Well, my opinion. And I think that all of you math teachers need to feel great. And I hope that you have been able to really take action and have a lot of equitable moments where you're able to celebrate culture, you're able to celebrate math today, you're able to help students to become more gritty and whatnot. I really hope that you guys have taken the initiative to really be productive today. There are so many different ways that you can implement, Pi Day and different activities to really reach all of your students. And if you ever need help with that, don't feel shy to reach out to myself or others. But like I said, I hope that you guys have really just had a great time with Pi Day today. With that said, I'm going to continue moving forward. I'm going to make some announcements for you guys. So first things first, if you're wanting to be featured on the Grit and Equity Talks podcast, then just send me an email, okay, to india.white.123@gmail.com, and we will get you slotted. I also wanted to remind you that the Grit and Equity Talks podcast, it'll be featured on Swain Girl Media, but also on X Factor EDU by Dr. Matthew Joseph and the Tribe. So if you check out the X Factor EDU network, you'll see that there are so many different podcasts and just experts on there. So I'm going to be among that tribe. So I appreciate your support from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Thank you for finding it on Spotify. Thank you for, liking it, subscribing to it, sharing it out. We love the support. We welcome all the support. So thank you. I also wanted to remind you to follow me on social media. My Facebook is Miss India White. LinkedIn is The India White. Twitter is Indy Speak and Teach. Instagram is Indy238. YouTube is India White 123. And TikTok is Dr. India White. As long as we are able to keep TikTok, who knows what's going on with that. So reach out to me on those channels. Feel free to send me a DM if you're wanting to connect with me about some opportunities later on, whether that's working with you at a conference or, at a professional development opportunity for your district or your classroom, whatever. I'm here for you. So don't be shy. Feel free to reach out. Now, today is Pi Day. So I wanted to talk with you guys about grit. And I wanted to talk about how to continue to have grit even in hard times. And so how do we help to have grit no matter what? So I'm going to say again that we are going to talk about having grit no matter what and how we're able to incorporate grit, just looking at the big picture. And I want to first start off by reminding you of what grit is. So we do have the rock star Dr. Angela Duckworth, who defined grit for us. And she said that it is the passion and perseverance to attain a long-term goal. The three key words here, you have to have passion, you have to have perseverance, and you have to have a goal. The problem is sometimes, especially when you're dealing with students, and no matter what community, but mostly marginalized communities or students that are just lacking resources or lacking a vision, there's not a goal. And I find that if a student is coming to the table and they don't have a goal, your hands are tied. There's only so much you can do because it's like their wheels are just spinning. And they don't really have any incentive to do well in a class because there's nothing tied to their success. Sometimes students will say, well, what am I going to get out of it? And that's the biggest thing. If you're in a classroom, whether it's math or English, whatever, and your students don't know what they're going to get out of that lesson, then that's not going to motivate them to continue to do their best or to pursue more math after that. This is why there's such a need for numeracy today, because when you have numeracy, you're able to really break down the math and break it down in a way that's in a real world context that's able to really motivate those students to go into future STEM areas or even whatever their career is, but to see the math that's tied into it. And then that makes them understand why they need to apply themselves in the classroom. So with that said, we have to have passion, perseverance, and a goal for all students. And then, of course, I told you grit. My acronym for grit is great resilience in time. The biggest thing, again, is resilience in time. Because if you have resilience in time and you have a goal, that's key for you to be able to be successful, whether it's a student or a teacher or administrator, whatever your role is. You're going to need that. You're going to need resilience. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're working out. I don't care if you're working on a garden. I don't care if you're getting ready to go to Busch Gardens and take on some roller coasters. You're going to need some type of grit. If you're trying to walk through the Disney park, you're going to need grit to get through that. That's a lot. So with that said, we have to understand why grit is so powerful and what happens when you're stuck in a rut and maybe you don't have a lot of grit. Now, I always try to tell you guys that grit it's like a variable. It's like a liquid. It is a trait that you can have much grit one day because you have a goal. Like, for instance, you have to submit a paper for college. You have to submit it in 30 minutes. You're going to be very gritty because you know you have a goal to submit this paper. You have so much passion because you don't want a zero. You don't want to fail. You don't want all those thousands of dollars to go down the drain because you didn't apply yourself in that set amount of time. You weren't resilient. So then you're not getting that grade. You're not getting that degree. So you have more grit. But then if I tell you, oh, yeah, I want you to complete this project for me, but it doesn't have to be done until 2030, the year 2030, you might not even think about starting it until maybe 2029. So your grit level, I mean, yeah, you've got grit, but your passion is so low because you have time. So when you have more time, your passion is affected. And then when your goal is way off like that, maybe you're not as passionate. I think the only time we're more passionate about goals is if you're like investing and you know that if you invest in, right now, then you can really get in. And I know many people are seeing that with certain investments right now. But what I'm trying to say to you is, it's imperative that you keep the main thing when it comes down to grit. It's about resilience. It's about time management. And it's about goal setting. And so how do we get our kids to have goals and to be motivated in our classes when they're tired and then when they're going through hard times? Because so many people will say, India, you can't disregard the fact that students have life show up at their doorstep. Students are grieving loved ones. Students are dealing with homelessness. Students are dealing with disappointment. Maybe they didn't get into the college. Maybe they're a senior. They didn't get into that number one college they wanted to get into. Maybe the parents are going through a situation. Maybe they're separated. Maybe they're going from house to house. There can be so many different things that can affect the grit levels of students. Maybe they're athletes or they're playing, an instrument and then they're not getting placed like they wanted to. Maybe they have some social situations going on with their friends at lunch. We don't know what's going on. All we know is that sometimes students are going to run into hard times and it's going to affect their grit levels. Sometimes students come to the table with odds stacked against them. Whether it's their environment, whether they are dealing with poverty and they're trying to juggle poverty, or maybe they're trying to juggle real world situations, at a younger age, because that's just their lot in life. That's what has been serviced to them. Or maybe they're dealing with some injustices as they're taking on education, some things that are beyond their control. And so they're trying to overcome all these things, but it's just a hard time. So whenever you're dealing with this and the student's head might be down, the student might be just completely discouraged, I want to give you some tips for helping these types of students. And then I'm going to also walk you through what I found doing some digging, being nosy on the internet for us. So first things first, these come from me, just my love for you. Whenever you're needing to be gritty, especially if you're trying to help a student, remind them to stay positive. Now, listen, some students, they're going to need you to let them vent and to let them talk. They're going to have an outlet to tell you what is really going on, to keep it real. Please do not hold that against them. Because when you think about it, who else are they talking to? Who else is listening? Who else is loving on these babies and saying, okay, I hear you and it makes sense now. And half of the time, that's why kids are still going through stuff, because they don't have an outlet. They don't have someone to tell them what's going on in their lives. So they're carrying all of this, and it's just adding to the trauma and to the pain and to the rejection and just the discouragement. And they feel defeated, and then they don't even want to go to school. They don't want to finish. And so then they don't persist because they feel like they don't have someone. And so, side note, I really highly recommend doing some type of mentoring program or system, whether it's like check and connect kind of system, some mentor buddying system. We had something like that. at the high school level, where we had our students who were high on our discipline track, and we paired them with a mentor. Now, when we did this, we asked teachers to volunteer, of course, those teachers and coaches that had great relationships. And I want to put a word out there for coaches. Coaches are probably the most influential people in the school setting, because they're controlling so many destinies of first generation students. You're talking students are going from a high school to NBA, to NFL, to tennis, WNBA, whatever, all these great avenues in these great platforms. Coaches have the power to truly make a difference. But I think what happens is there's some type of disconnect between the coach and the sports and the academics, to where students feel like they have to choose. Do I want to get like maybe a 1.8 academic, but then be a star athlete? Or do I want to get a 3.5 academic, and then I'm just like an athlete that maybe just rides the sidelines of, of the football field, because I'm more focused on academics. So I want to put a challenge out here to coaches and to, administrators, leaders that deal with coaches and teachers. We have to find a way where all of us can merge for the common good of kids. Coaches have to start talking more about academics for students. Coaches have to figure out a way to help our students so that they're not graduating with like a 1.9, 1.6 GPA and they're a star athlete. How can we balance this to where they could be a star athlete and still have a 3.0, still have higher than a 3.0? Why is it that students are so devoted to getting on the field and getting on the team that they'll forsake grades? And it seems to be condoned. I don't know who can help us with this, but if you know of a coach, if you are a coach, if you are maybe even in a university setting, can you please consider how can we put together programs to help influence the grit levels of students and influencing their academics so that they can perform better in the classroom as well as on the field or on the court? That's just my 2 cents. I digress. I just really wish that students didn't feel like they had to choose between a coach and an English class or a math class. And I do feel too, something coaches are doing right, besides just, of course, guaranteeing students an opportunity to play ball, I think is their way to build relationships with students. I don't know what they're doing. I feel like they have such an open approach and they're so welcoming and they embrace culture and they understand hardships and they really work one-on-one with families, right? Because of course you're constantly, I mean, my son, and he does little flag football, whatever, and the coach is always talking to us. I wish teachers could adopt some of this. So for teachers, I need teachers that are listening to this. I want to ask you some questions. Do you know your coaches? Do you know your students that are playing ball, tennis, whatever, for the coaches, or your band, your band people? Do you know these leaders? If you know them, are you connected? Are you really tight with them? Like, are you having conversations about academics and about that student's performance in your class? Not just behavior. How are they doing academically? And are you coming up with a plan with the coaches to say, listen, I need y'all to join us with helping getting this child's grades up, to helping this child to not miss school, to increase in their ability and their behavior, whatever it is. And we really shouldn't be focusing solely on behavior. I think that's really a pet peeve of mine, when we focus more on behavior than we do academics, because in that, I think we are maybe leading with like a school to prison type of mindset, because it's, if we're so worried about controlling a student and having the student be like so rigid and so whatever, but we don't care about the grade slipping, that's a problem. That's an area of concern. And I think that it should be more of a focus on academics than it should be on behavior. Doesn't mean that behavior is not relevant. That just means that we need to shift our focus back to academics first before anything else. So with that said, we've got to figure out how to help our students and how to even help with number 2 here, helping them to remember their goals. How can we help students to remember their goals? I think a coach working with the classroom teacher is key. Coaches should be in on these meetings. Coaches should be in on different, evaluations of students, different um, promotional opportunities for students, recommendations. Coaches should be in there. So I'm going to get off of that because I just get really passionate about that because I think coaches are so powerful and they're not being utilized appropriately in all of our school settings. I hope that we are able to find common ground there where coaches can have their voices elevated, but that they also can empathize and understand from the teacher lens what's going on for each student and how to best service these students academically. Now, tip number 3, keep dreaming. So we've got to help students to keep dreaming because sometimes the only dream they have is NFL and NBA. Maybe they've never seen anyone in their family or in their neighborhood or in their community to become an industrial engineer, aerospace engineer, or someone that was a banker or financial advisor. Maybe that kind of conversation is not happening. Maybe they're not having those conversations about college investments and 529B plans. Maybe they don't know this kind of stuff. So maybe we have to be the ones to introduce them to that. And I always tell people, like, even when I go and speak and whatnot, I highly recommend that whenever you're working with students that might not have a high level of grit and they might not have motivation, give them dreams. So if they can't keep dreaming, help them dream. Give them a place to start at. Tell them, oh, you'll be a great business person or a great entrepreneur, a great doctor, a great lawyer. Give them something, right? And then, of course, the next one, continue to work on yourself, not just you, but also your students. So this is, if we all understand that our lives is always going to be a work in progress, the beautiful thing about being alive is you can always evolve and blossom. You can always just fulfill your destiny, and it's beautiful. I think of a garden. The thing I love about gardening is your garden is alive. Your garden, it starts to have its own vibe after a while. And then you have the authority to decide what you want your garden to look like, what flowers you really want to nurture so that they blossom well, which ones got to go because, the season's up. You have so much authority when you're working on like a garden as far as like cultivating it and making sure it's beautiful, making sure it blossoms, make sure it produces. Well, just like that, you are the same way. You have the authority and the power in your own life to say, I want to change this about my life. I want to change the way I think about this. I want to change this. And maybe you're like me. Maybe you're working on some personal goals with your health. Maybe you want to, target some things like that. Maybe there are certain places you visited or certain habits that you had, and you're like, I'm just gonna give that up. Just gonna give that up this year. And you're using more discipline and self-control. Good for you. But just like you do it for you, do it for your students as well. Maybe you can start setting goals for your students and say, hey, I think I can see this more in you. I want to see more of this trait in you. I want to see more of you performing this way, or I want to hear more of your student voice when we're having conversations. Sit that student down and talk with them one-on-one about how you envision them and how you can really see them thrive in the classroom setting. Now, next things here is tip number 5 from me is to reach out for support because you're not in this alone. As an educator, as a leader, you're not building grit alone. You're not doing this alone. And the thing I love about people, I am an extrovert. Sometimes I'm an introvert, depending on the situation, believe it or not. Yes. The thing I love about people is people feed you. They'll feed your spirit with the love and the good they have. And sometimes, you've got your outliers out there that it's just whatever. But for the most part, people are good. And you think I'm lying? Listen, check people out during a hurricane. Like if they are stuck in a hurricane, and all of their lives are at risk, what do? They come together as a community. What do you need? Do you need food? Do you need a trash can? Do you need bags? Do you need sand bags? Do you need a trip to the store? Do you need an extra thing of gas? I got it. People come together naturally, because people naturally are good. If you choose to see the glass half full and see people for the good that they bring to the table, those same people will help you and give you support. And listen, sometimes the most support will come from strangers, people that you don't really know that well. They will be the ones to help you get there. I'm thankful for one of my publishers. I was going through a really low state in my life. I think my mom had just passed away. Um, my dad passed, and I was going through a lot, y'all. I was going through a lot emotionally, and I was just in a rut. I could not finish. And it wasn't that I didn't want to. Look, I had the goal, but I had to deal with life. And I'm telling you this because some people are in the same thing where it's like they have a goal, they have everything, but their emotions are there. Can I be honest with you? Like, yeah, we talk grit and all that. That's imperative, but you also have to be realistic about your situation. You're going to have moments where you're at like rock bottom in your emotions, like your gut, like your soul is just tanked. Okay, guess what? You're a part of the human race. This happens, and that means that your life is going to go in cycles, up and down. If you can remember that life comes in cycles and you have to go through low times as well as high times, but it's what you're doing in the low time to bounce back to a high time that matters. And so I was in that. In the low time, I had to reach out for support. I had to be vulnerable and honest. I'd say, I can't do this. I can't do this. Like, I want to do this, but I just can't do this on my own. And so as a result, we were able to publish the Equity Counts book because she was amazing. And she came through during a low time in my life. And I'm thankful for Dr. Ayal and the team, the tribe that came through for me on that book. Love y'all. Y'all are amazing. But I say that because students also have low times. They have low times in their tanks and in their souls and their guts. Sometimes we feel like students just come to class always on a high, no problems, right? Just cruising through life. That's not the reality. And we're starting to see that in this generation, there's been a shift where there have been more problems, more trauma. Students are trying to deal with real situations, real adult situations in middle school, high school. And how do we speak? And sometimes elementary, right? So how do we help to speak to them and cater to their needs of academic excellence while dealing with the whole child and helping them? It's through developing grit, but it's through, in those low times, helping them, giving them the support they need. Do they need to talk to a guidance counselor? Do they need a buddy at school, a friend? Sometimes it's not bad that the student is talking to someone. Sometimes we get so worried about, oh my God, these kids can't talk. Like it's almost like when you first start teaching and you think the class is going to be heaven on earth. Like nobody's ever going to say anything out of turn. Nobody's going to use a cell phone. Everybody's going to raise their hands. Everybody's going to do all their homework to proficiency 100% every day. I'm going to be able to teach without interruptions. Students going to understand every single thing I say. And it's just, all my kids going to score level 5s on that state exam. That is not reality. And sometimes your students, they are at the breaking edge of whatever they're going through and they're desperate. And sometimes, y'all, they're going to need to talk to their friend. They're going to need to say a little bit of something, get a joke in, get a hug. They're reaching out for support as well. And so it's imperative that when you are dealing with grit during hard times, or you're trying to develop grit during a hard time, that you reach out for support. Realize that you're not alone. And listen, you as an educator, you as a leader, you might be a rock star, like top of your game. Got it. Excellent. But guess what? You're not alone. You weren't even placed at the top for you to just shine alone. It's better that we work together. So even if you're a rock star, choose to be a rock star with other rock stars. Choose to soar with others. You know, it makes me think of when you're taking a flight and, you know, you have to choose which plane to get on, whether it's Delta, American, Spirit, United, or whatever your airline is. The one thing you don't see is a bunch of pilots fighting each other. They're all flying, they're all doing their thing, but they're better together collaboratively because not everyone can fly all these people, right? So you've got Americans doing their thing, Delta's doing their thing, Spirit's doing their thing, United's doing their thing, and they're all flying together, and they're all respectful in their own lanes. Sometimes they collaborate, they help each other out if there's a shortage or whatnot. And they've got it going on. You never hear of, planes in the air. You'll see, maybe you're flying Delta and you see a United plane, or you're flying American, you see a Delta, whatever. You don't see the planes like, wait, I know they're not flying over there like me. I know they're not flying. Oh no, I'm gonna take their plane down. And then can you imagine? And then they like go to attack the other plane. Bam, like that's chaos. Well, guess what? In our world, we need to work together and not crash into each other. That's chaos. We need to support each other as we fly in our lanes, as we do our work. We need to uplift each other, refer each other, support one another as we're supporting kids and giving them our best. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to go to the next one, and that's celebrate. Celebrate your successes. Celebrate the successes of students. Help your students to understand how to celebrate their successes. Some students are very humble, and they feel like they don't want to be braggadocious, so they don't really celebrate their success. So take a moment to teach students how to celebrate their success and to be proud. And listen, sometimes you'll be like, oh God, that student's full of themselves. I remember having this type of situation with certain students, and teachers would make comments, oh, they're full of themselves and their nose is in the air. Let me help you with that. I would rather a student be so full of themselves, cocky, arrogant, haughty even, and to know that they are breaking the cycle of poverty or that they are making a difference, than for a student to be down the earth, no goals, nothing lined up, no kind of sense of worth. I would rather have a student that is overly confident, that is proud of their work, because that, my friend, we can mold into phenomenal world changers in society. And that's what we need more of. So whenever you have a student that's prideful and they're just braggadocious, let them own it. Of course, you can give them, tips and feedback as to how to be more wise, but don't crush their little spirits. Don't crush their little spirits. Let them evolve into greatness, because that's what we are building in them. And a lot of the cockiness and stuff is because they know they're loved and they know they have a tribe. So let them celebrate. Let them enjoy that. Now, and the last one, stay grateful. Whenever you're down in a rut, the greatest way to come out of that rut is through gratefulness. Being grateful. Choose 10 things you're grateful for. Are you grateful for clean air? Are you grateful, for the flowers that you're seeing that are blossoming right now? Are you grateful if you're up north for the snow? Are you grateful for healthy family members? Are you grateful that you have a meal to eat? Are you grateful that you're received in your profession? Are you grateful that you weren't in an accident? And if you were in an accident, you didn't die, right? You're here. So there are certain things that we can choose to be grateful for. Sometimes we have to slow down enough and choose to be grateful for life. So I hope that helps you guys. And I just want to show one of the little things where we're talking about trying grit. And I thought this was really neat. It said, are you constantly struggling? Try grit. And I love it because we've tried everything else. Let's try grit. So grit is the ability, this author, what's her name? I love Ray Parker. It was reviewed by Ray Parker. And the author is Carla Schumann, Dr. Carla Schumann. She has her PhD, From Trial to Triumph. So she says here, while some people naturally possess more grit, you can cultivate it through effort. Excellent. So you can cultivate it through effort. She says, people with grit, they look forward. This is powerful, y'all. They look forward. They let go of grudges. They let go of mistakes, and they let go of disappointments. You have to, because grit is always going to call you higher. And these are low vibrations. All of this, grudges, mistakes, all of those are low vibrations. We're just better people than that. So she keeps going. She talks about how the APA, American Psychological Association, they say that more people are struggling with anxiety, depression, and mental health conditions than ever before. Okay. And so this is why we need to start focusing on grit, is because it's real. I mean, people are dealing with stuff. And so she's talking about here, she says that, she's done her work, her clinical work. And she says, I believe in the power of resilience. There's that word again, resilience, right? And she says that is the psychological quality that allows some people to be knocked down by the adversities of life and to come back at least as strong as before. It's all about that. And it's a psychological quality. This can be developed. So I thought that was pretty neat that she was saying that. I'm going to go back to this original article here. So now she's talking. Okay, there's a rock star, Dr. Angela Duckworth here. Okay, and it says that Duckworth, she talks about how to be gritty, and she argues the ability to endure hardship is a part of what constitutes grit. That part, the ability to endure, which means that you cannot just assume life is going to be a bed of roses. You're going to have those hard times, and students will have those hard times in a math class. So she talks about how Duckworth also says that grit will help you to achieve success, and says that there's a couple of areas here. So for one, grit takes effort. Yes, grit takes effort. Life is not fair, and it does involve more times, more tough times than easy times. Remember, so you've got the cycle. Life comes in ups and downs. Okay, so she talks about how life, it takes more efforts. We've got to let go of grudges, mistakes, and disappointments. We have to have a goal. And then she says here, find a passion for your purpose. That's powerful. And this is what I've been trying to tell you guys with grit is there has to be passion tied to a purpose, and it has to be in a set amount of time. So to find a purpose, whether it's related to your career or opportunities, you can serve as a volunteer or even do a hobby. Find something that gives you love, that you would love to pour your energy into it. That's what we have to do for our students. What do they love to pour their energy into? Video games? Okay, maybe they can be a video game designer. Basketball? Okay, maybe they can talk about basketball management. If they can't make the NBA, maybe they can manage some of the people on the team. There's so many different options, but we have to just give students these options and opportunities as we are helping to cultivate their passion so that they'll be more gritty as they're working with us. And then, of course, here she says, enduring hardship is important to grit, but no one can continuously withstand different circumstances without someone or something to feel hopeful about. And that's the thing. This is a powerful conclusion statement. We have to feel hopeful about something. And so being able to really help students to cultivate their grit is key, because they're our future generation and they deserve to be set up for success. So I hope that this podcast today is going to help you guys as far as like with building grit and whatnot. And so thank you so much for coming on and listening. Again, I want to make some announcements. I do have a little grit mini workshop that we're working on with G.R.I.T. So be mindful of that. Thank you to Robert and the tribe. Y'all are amazing. I appreciate you guys giving a space for this. And I pray that this helps so many teachers and leaders nationwide as they're trying to develop grit with students and leaders. Also, I wanted to remind you guys again that the Grit and Equity Talks podcast with Dr. G.R.I.T, it's going to be featured on the X Factor EDU, hosted by Dr. Matthew Joseph, and it can be found on Spotify. And then, of course, you can follow me on social media. Miss India White is my Facebook. The India White is LinkedIn. Indy Speak and Teach is Twitter or X. Indy238 is Instagram. And then YouTube is India White 123, and TikTok is Dr. India White. Thank you to those that have followed and subscribed, that have been a great support. I appreciate you. And again, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys. I've got a couple of events coming up. I've got the Minnesota Council of Teachers of Mathematics in April. I'll be a featured speaker there. In Wisconsin, I'll be a keynote in Wisconsin at the Wisconsin Math Council. And I have so many other events, but I didn't want to put so much on you at this time. So hopefully I'll see you in Minnesota, or I'll see you in Wisconsin. If not, then check out again the Grit Mini Workshop that is going to launch sooner than later. So you can find it on the G.R.I.T Workshop website whenever that comes out. So with that said, guys, thanks so much again for joining me on the Grit and Equity Talks podcast. And until next time, stay gritty.